good afternoon. I know learning and hunger doesn't go together, and especially deep learning and hunger definitely not. But what to do, I will try to cover the talk as quickly but without missing things as possible. And okay, in the meantime, I am from the Department of Aerospace Engineering, Indian Institute of Science. We have a UAV lab and we also work on satellite image processing. So here we have tried to take advantage of both in the light of the recent advances in deep learning. So that is the premise. So here we have three distinct components: the UAV, the satellite images that are available, and the DL or deep learning architectures. So fusing them, what you can really do. So that can be further used for any sort of your geospatial applications. So the premise is this. See, if you look at the UAV, the spatial resolution is excellent. You get at centimeter level. Whereas if you take satellites, even if you take Cartosat, it is in meters. And Cartosat 2 data, as you know, is not that easily available, whereas the Sentinel data is available, that is 10-meter resolution. But we have to work with that, and we also got some Cartosat data with which we have worked. I will show you some of the results that we have got. Now, how do we combine these spatial and spectral resolutions to our advantage? That is the thing. UAVs, you can fly anytime you want because it's generally under your control. Whereas satellites, especially these, whether Cartosat or Sentinel, they are optical. Of course, Sentinel has a microwave band, but generally they are optical. And they have their own cycle. It's not that whenever you want you get it. So you have to wait for that particular day, time, etc. And at that time there should be no cloud cover also. That is another thing, if you are depending on optical data. But this is quite reasonably, UAVs are under your control even in rainy season. Of course, generally we fly under cloud, therefore there is no serious problem in getting the data except that when it is really raining. So how to use this? You get the images from UAVs, which is very good spatial resolution. Then you have the big swath, high spectral resolution satellite images. So now how do we fuse them? So in other words, how do you exploit these resolution issues to create a high swath but high spatial and spectral resolution image? That can be done using the learning techniques. So here is the first take. This is the UAVs. We have a fairly sophisticated UAV lab where we design, fabricate, fly them, acquire data, analyze data, everything under one roof. And we have nearly flown about 100 different types of UAVs, including fixed wing, rotary wing, hybrid, and for various applications. And generally for data deciphering, because that is important, flying the drone today is no big deal. Everybody will fly. Initially we have a quadrangle. 10 years back when we started, when we used to fly the quadcopter, you see everybody would be standing on the quadrangle. First floor, second floor, everybody will be peeping, and we were also very happy. Now we fly 2, 3 also, nobody will look at it. Because just that flying, the fun that has gone. Now what can you accomplish with it? So today that is the whole aspect, what we call as the drone computing. One is how you fly the drone, second is with the data that you get, what you do. So whether you are using optical cameras, RGB cameras, or LIDAR, or hyperspectral cameras or multispectral cameras. We have multispectral camera where you can, apart from the RGB, you also get a NIR, near infrared, red edge you can get. Hyperspectral are available for different bands, from 15 bands to 200 bands they are available, but they are expensive and we cannot afford. So therefore, we have not attempted that. As soon as we get the funding, I think we will do that. But for agriculture application, at least we should use a multispectral imagery so that you can compute some of the indices, especially the non-dimensional vegetative indices or NDVI, which perhaps most of you are aware. Of course, GPS is one of the essential items because we need to GPS tag both for flying autonomously and also for data acquisition we need that. So this is another multispectral we have used with the fixed wing. If the area is large, for example, when we did in Palakkad, Kerala, we had to survey nearly 500 acres. So a rotary wing is slow and difficult. So this fixed wing can fly in one shot, we can get most of the data. That is the advantage. Then one more study we did nearby Kolar. There we have used the quadcopter. The quadcopter essentially, yes, 4 rotors are there, its payload limitation is there, and endurance is also very limited, not more than half an hour we can fly. So these are the 2 vehicles we have used, and we have used the RGB camera, that is the GoPro camera, and then the multispectral camera for acquisition of the images. Then this is of course the satellites, Sentinel data. This is of course available to everybody. Anybody can get some of the details of the bands, etc. I have given. You can go through when you have time, and this is available from the ISRO website. Then the other one is about the latest, the Cartosat 2 data that is also available. This has a good resolution in terms of meters. It is less than 1 meter, but the data availability is little difficult. It's not that like Sentinel you can download anytime you want. You can just go to their website, you give the lat-long location, you can get it. Whereas Cartosat 2, that is for some particular purpose we got the same, this campus, including IISc and your NIAS, we got one image that we have used. So these are the tools that we use. Then what is this super resolution? Well, this you see now you may have some high resolution image or the target image, and you have a low resolution image which you acquire, or technically it is called the image with some sort of a noise. Okay. Now using these two, can you generate a super resolution image? So what is the use? The use is that next time when you have a low resolution image, if you give that, you get a reasonably high resolution image which takes advantages of both your low resolution LR and high resolution HR image, so that you get a super resolution image which is of advantage. So that is the idea. So to do that, we use the scheme of deep learning. Now when we say deep learning, often we find, of course you might have gone through several talks on deep learning, but still I have few rudimentary slides which will do that. So these are all come under what we call as artificial intelligence. Okay, so they all come under that broad definition. So this is a branch of computer science dealing with simulation of intelligent behavior in computers. Okay, so it all started with, first the human wanted to reduce his mechanical work. That's how some intelligence was built into a lot of machines. That's how you get mixies, wet grinders, washing machines, and to that they also put in some fuzzy logic. Still I don't know, today they have not, the manufacturers, they apparently they don't know DL, otherwise they would have put washing machine with deep learning. Okay, so somehow they have not used that word, because today's world, full of two words in technology is drones and deep learning. just like WhatsApp and Facebook in communication. So these are the most popular buzzwords. So somehow we want to imitate the human behavior. That is the idea. So that is it. And machine learning is a subset of AI, as you can see from the picture also. Then this is some sort of statistical methods or somehow embedded, so which can improve with experience. That is why many of the hardcore statisticians, when they see our publications with some small variants, they always have a comment on us. They are not happy because we tweak some algorithm, some learning rate, some adaptive learning rate, because these are all heuristics. There is no precise mathematical proof, and still somewhat, if not exactly a black box, at least definitely it is not white, like statistics. Well, statistics is also not white in some sense. It also conceals lot more than it reveals. So there is always this debate going on. But nonetheless, it does. Then deep learning is again a subset of ML, where it is inspired by actually the way our human brain works with all these so many layers of interconnectedness. So that's what it does. So there is a lot of feature extraction that goes on, and earlier it was called as artificial neural network. That has been generalized with multiple layers thanks to the advent of better computing platforms that we are able to do. So I don't think I should spend too much of time. Well, traditional programming versus machine learning we have here. Then the deep learning, where you can see that deep layered architectures are available. So multiple layers, they try to extract the features. How do you connect these multiple layers and what all you do in between? That is what leads to a variety of architectures. Some of it we will see in our future slides. So this is the key difference. So the deep learning and the machine learning, one of the key difference is the way data is presented. Machine learning always needs a structured data, whereas deep learning relies on the layers. So it has the ability to extract the features, and then DL can automatically discover the features to be used, whereas ML needs some sort of a supervision. Somebody should tell that this is what it is done. So there are multiple applications. You can go to my website, look at some of the works that we have done in deep learning. I will also show you a few examples apart from this. Then this is what it is, how they are dependent on data. Then you can see that traditional machine algorithms, data has a limitation, whereas the machine learning, more the data, better will be its performance. So as you keep using the deep learning algorithms, your precision will improve. So then this is the same thing difference. Well, having said that, this is what we have used, what is popularly called as the generative adversarial networks. Here essentially you should recognize that there are two networks. One is the generator network, another is the discriminator network, and this is where you input real images or your HR, high resolution image. This is where you input your noise vector or the low resolution image. The generator network, well, through some layered architecture, will generate the so-called high resolution image. The discriminator network will compare with the real image or the ground truth, if you may prefer to call it that way. Then you get a predicted image. And the discriminator will also tell whether we will calculate some loss function and then decide whether this has to again go back or is it acceptable. So it's a iterative architecture. So this is the essential principle. All other things what you see in the future slides, some variation here, some variation here. So I will not go too much into those details except showing them. Using some of these things, for example, the layers here you can have fully connected, or some of it you can miss or bypass to save the computation time and also improve the feature extraction, etc. So that's how you get variety of other networks. We have worked on for 3 popularly known networks, plus we have done our own network which exploits the advantage of these 2. One is the SR-GAN or super resolution generative adversarial network, another is the ESR GAN, another is the EDSR, then another is the EDSR with ESR GAN. This is what we have done, and obviously our proposed approach seems to do well in terms of the performance. We will show you the results. So this is what it is. Because of paucity of time, I will not dwell too much upon this. There are operations, variety of operations that are going on. You can see the batch normalization, convolution, and the ReLU operation, and this repeats for several blocks. So how many of this has to be repeated, etc., is a design issue. Similarly, you can see the discriminator network. So the discriminator network will generate one, and then the generator network will generate the so-called super resolution image, which the discriminator network will take and then decide whether it has to be accepted or further training is essential. So to improve the previous or the SR-GAN, one is that you remove all the batch normalization layers, and because we have to reduce the computation complexity, then replace the basic block with residual in and residual dense block, which combines multi-level residual network and dense connections. So we also use what is called as relativistic GAN. So based on some of the probability, instead of saying whether accept or not, to what level it can be accepted, to what level it is deficient, can be used. So as you see here, so this is SR-GAN, this is what it is replaced by. So you don't see all the connections, some skip connections. In standard GAN it is 1 or 0, here it is more probabilistic. So this will help during the course of training. Now, how many to skip? If it is more realistic, you don't have to do much. Then the enhanced super resolution. Here this is due to optimization by removing unnecessary modules in the conventional residual networks. Then the performance is further improved by expanding model size, while we also do some stabilization things for the training procedure. So this is how it looks. Okay, only notionally I can understand this, I also don't know specifically. If you are interested, my student is here, Dr. Balaji, you can talk to him about these architectures if you are interested. So this is what we have recently come out with. How do you combine both so that you have the optimization plus both in terms of performance and computation time, that we call it as the EDSR plus ESR GAN architecture, and our results will reflect our claim. First what we did, we thought we will take just the satellite images, Sentinel-2 and Cartosat-2. You know, this is about 10 meter and this is about 1 meter. Then you do the image acquisition, you do the pre-processing, do the georeferencing, very important because they are taken at different angles, different orientations, etc. Then you generate the patch, then use the GAN model and just get the predicted image. So what is it? I will tell you. How do we analyze the predicted image? we don't necessarily look at the resolution, but something else I'll tell you. So this is Cartosat 2, this is IISc, and NIOS is also there, and this is the Sentinel 2. How can we combine, get the best out of the two? That is the idea. So we did that when we did with SR GAN for 140 epochs, then ESR GAN for 140 epochs, then you see EDSR, and this is what we have done, our architecture. This is what we have got. Now, good question was asked, now what is its resolution? Will this resolution be 10 meter, 1 meter, between 1 and 10? What is it? How do we measure that? We measure that like this. What we call as the peak signal to noise ratio and structural similarity index. There are formulas, there is a theory for computing these things. You can look in your earlier papers. This peak signal to noise ratio should be close to 30. Closer to 30 means it is a good thing. Then most importantly, structural similarity index is between +1 to -1. Obviously -1 indicating the very poor performance and +1 indicating high performance. So things like this, we have got 0.6, etc. So it's fairly good. So which means we have definitely a resolution which is far superior to Sentinel and true to the what the Cartosat 2 represents. That's the idea. Then we stepped up with a more difficult problem, because now we have to have the UAV imagery, because that's very, very fine resolution. For that you should do UAV flight mapping. If you want to do, for example, we did the paddy crop at Palakkad. So what we do is we find out the area to be surveyed. We have a flight planning software. We just take the Google map location, we feed it to the flight mapper, and it will generate a flight path for the UAV. Now why this is necessary? This is necessary because when you want to do the mosaicing of these images, there should be at least 70% overlap. When it goes like this, when it comes, then it cannot come away, it has to come closer, so that 70% of what it has seen, it should be able to see again. Similarly, it has to do that. And there is also this curvature. Your aircraft cannot simply take a right about turn and come. So all that will be considered, and the flight planner will give you the what is called as waypoints for navigation. These waypoints we are going to put on our firmware, and we take there, and the moment you launch it there, it will automatically do that. So that is the kind of flexibility we have with whatever we have developed. So that's how you do that. Then acquire the data with all the geotags. Then you have to generate the orthomosaic of these multispectral images. For that, there are a lot of softwares, including what is called a Pix4D, where you give all these images and it will generate a orthomosaic of the same. Then the geotagged, this Cartosat 2 data is there. Then again you register them, again generate the patch, then again go to the deep learning network. Okay, so that is what we have done. So essentially this is what it is. So briefly, the flight campaign, data acquisition, orthomosaic, then register with the Cartosat, then you go to generating the super resolution image using the deep learning architectures. So this is the overall philosophy. So this is some information about whatever we have done at the Palakkad. This is at Kolar. Actually the resolution is far better than what you are seeing. Then all other processing we take care of. Oh yeah, yeah. It is gyro stabilized. We have a gimbal on which it is mounted. The shake that you see is not because of that camera, that because of your computer here. We did crop health monitoring at this. We were able to identify the unhealthy crops in Kerala after their floods, and we also verified with the ground truth. So we computed the what to call as this NDVI index based on the multispectral imagery, and we have shown them that this technology is worth. Okay, that will go on. And now we have used GoPro plus multispectral camera. Okay, so back here. So generally, there are options. You can take it as a video or multiple slides of pictures. So those options are there in our camera itself. So you can see some of the pictures from Kolar plus some of the pictures from the Palakkad. Then at the Palakkad, you have to do the orthomosaicing of all the images that are obtained. So that orthomosaicing is done. So this is the orthomosaiced image. Then you have the UAV high resolution image, Sentinel-2 low resolution image. Please remember, we are talking of some 10 centimeter versus 10 meter. So that is the thing. So then the super resolution we got is on the right side. So now this is a huge image. So what we have done is taking window to window. We have taken about 5 windows, and the results of that you can see in the right hand table. The peak signal to noise ratio is fairly acceptable. Also structural similarity index is somewhat close to 1. This could improve because we don't have too many images. Obviously we cannot expect a better result, because as I told you, in all the deep learning architectures, more data you give, the performance of them will definitely be better. So what you will see is a minimum guarantee performance, which means there is more scope to improve this. So this is what we have done about the work related to. So once you have this, you can generate that map and use it for any of your geospatial application. That is the idea. What application, it is all up to you. Then I'll also use this time to show you we did some work on tomato yield estimation using UAV imagery near Kolar, because the idea is that sometimes the tomato is rupees 80 per kg. Recently it was 80 paisa per kg. They could not transport, they threw it. So we came out with a methodology where we can yield estimation we can do. We use the drone imagery, and from the drone imagery, using the deep learning techniques, we can pick up each tomato as an object. I'll show you. You can see the result here. Each tomato is picked up as an object. See? So immediately you will get the number of tomatoes that are there, number 1. Number 2, RGB information is available, which means you know the texture of the tomato. Number 3, most importantly, the size of the box is proportional to the size of the tomato. So you know the size of the tomato also. So you will get information on the yield, on the quality of the tomato, on the grading of the tomato. So this is very, very important. Once you have that, you can suggest to other farmers whether they need to grow more or not, because the demand is known, supply need to be regulated. That is possible. And for also farmer also, the middleman cheating need not be there because the grading is automatically available through this scheme. And this was published in Deccan Herald. Our work was published in Deccan Herald very prominently. It attracted several people. The state government also called us, one of the principal secretaries, he called us and we made a presentation for 1 hour. He said, this is an excellent idea, we will support it and this has to be taken forward. I will come back to you, and this happened 2 years back. And from the central government also somebody wrote to us. We had quite a few email exchanges. That's all. That's how it is. And several other people came to our lab. They keep visiting and we keep presenting this. Everybody says this is an excellent thing. Why on earth have we not looked at this? Then my next question to them is, why on earth have you not come back to us? Anyway, then we can also do this, the tree crown. This is IASC. We flew the UAV, got this image. Then you can do this classification. What kind of tree cover is this? We can easily do. These are some of the things that we have done. And if it is a arcanut or banana plantation, we can actually pick up the number of plants also. Of course, if you are using multispectral imagery, you can also calculate or know about their health status. Then we have done work on mango yield detection. You can see the boxes around mango. Box size again similar to tomato thing, proportional to the mango size. You can do the yield estimation. So whenever I show this, some people will ask me, what about mangoes hidden? The answer to that is, not many are hidden because they grow well only when they are exposed to sunlight. So that is a saving grace, and this is also an estimation, therefore it's okay. We have done the flood victims, how to detect, because many times what we see is in the floods, people do not know. One is the communication is lost, nobody knows who is where and how many are there. This time recently, what happened, there were 80 people in Kerala stranded in a place. Somebody said, then somebody took a boat which can carry only 8 people. And generally when it is a rescue team, all the 80 will rush. Then that selecting people will become a terrible headache. They had a serious problem and they somehow had to get over it, they resolved it. But when this was told, then we decided, okay, why don't we have an algorithm, and if we know how many people are there in any given situation, I think some more images are there, I think he has not included. Number of people sitting on rooftop, etc. we can capture. We get the numbers so that where they are can be known. The rescue operations can take place better. It can also pick up the animal, because that is also the cattle, etc. is also important for us. Once you know where, how many are there, the rescue operations can be more scientific and fruitful. Then for taking care of the loss of communication, we have also designed a UAV, which we are now going to fly in another week or 10 days, which can carry a small communication tower, and it can fly for about 3.5 hours. And so that we establish at least the WhatsApp link so that people can talk to ground control station and help the rescue operation. Well, in conclusion, as the deep learning and our whatever using UAVs and satellite images can be of great advantage to a variety of purposes, especially for all the spatial analytics. Deep learning is definitely a wonderful tool which need to be explored, and there are several architectures which are available to all to use. Therefore, many can get an upstart in using these for a variety of purposes. I am sure you are having a very good deliberation, and this I thank the Space Technology Cell for supporting this work. I'm happy to see so many enthusiasts participating in this seminar. I wish you all the best. I also thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to be here and share a few of my thoughts. I thank Dr. Balaji because a lot of work here he has put in here, and several other students, yes, they are also a part of it. Of course, without students we have no job here. Their walk, my talk. Thank you. God bless you. Namaste. I am also hungry now, so no problem.
Identification number of tomatoes that you are using drone and what is it for that?
The RGB.
Only RGB. Then you were talking about that high resolution image. No, you can find out the number of tomatoes with only RGB. That is high resolution drone image.
Yeah, drone image. See, that has nothing to do with our super resolution.
Then will it not be a costly attempt to fly drone on each and every farm and identify the tomatoes and finalizing the yield? Will it not be a costly attempt?
Cost is involved. There is no doubt. It is not a proposal at the farmer level. Definitely not.
Because thousands of acres will be growing
No, not so.
throughout the
Yeah,
Karnataka.
it is not so
Such
difficult. No, not throughout the Karnataka. If you
No,
look
no,
at,
I'm just telling you, sir. We wanted to analyze how much
I'll answer
yield
you.
will come to the market. So, if we are taking up the study like that, we have to take up wherever the tomatoes are
no,
growing.
no. There are few packets where it matters. Other packets, it does not seriously impact. Kolar is a very serious player in tomato. Like sugar cane, Mandya around, serious players. Other places also they grow, but impact is not much. You look at cotton, you look at pomegranate. Several places they grow, but their market input is
No, what I was
not
feeling
much.
is that's why government didn't turn back because
no,
it
no,
isn't a costly
no,
affair.
no, it is not so. It is not so.
Because approximate yield, the farmer will know because
That is not the idea. Farmer will know is not the
and
point.
we can collect the information from the farmer.
No, that is not the idea. What is happening here? Why then the rates are going down? We should understand.
Because so much of yield
No.
proportionate to the consumption.
No. Then rate should not fall, no.
I mean, when yield is more.
No, please listen. What happens here, one farmer will grow, another will also grow. It is a 3-month crop. They keep continuously growing. Nobody knows what is the necessary demand. Because nobody tell them, there is no advisory body which tells them don't grow. Already so many people have there. So to tell that there is no way today. So everybody is growing. That's how sometimes you see 80 rupees per kg. Recently, they have thrown all the tomato to the road. Why that is happening? Because because the demand is known. The Hopcoms, etc., generally they will indicate what is the demand. Whereas growers do not know, they are in dark. They simply because they copy, seeds are available, put that fellow is growing, I also grow. That's how it comes. And because last time somebody sold for 80 per kg, made some money, this time everybody will go for that. If we can use this technology and it is not as costly as you think, in fact 250 hectares in Kerala we were able to do in less than 1 hour using fixed wing. Here we have used a quadcopter just for convenience. So there are faster ways of doing it, cheaper ways of doing it. Huh?
How accurate that resolution will detect each tomato?
That result is what I have shown you. Yeah, exactly same. Number one. Number two, the camera is also improving. Today we have very high resolution cameras. Even from 150 meters high I can get fantastic imagery. So that is why this is a viable technology.